Welcome everyone to Pontos Fathom Press. Today we're going to look at our trilogy called the Kathu Journals out of Lovecraft's Providence, volumes 1, 2, and 3 by August Moldenhauer. This series of books is inspired by Lovecraft. So if you're a Lovecraft fan, this is a great place to be. Just like to mention that this will be an overview of the series as a whole. There are also individual reviews of each of the books that will kind of go in depth on what the books cover and read from each of the books. If you like what you see, you're interested in the books, links to purchase the books below would support the channel. We are an independent publisher of print books and digital media. So our sponsorship comes from purchase of the books and from our Patreon members. Over on Patreon, we'll also be doing an extended series of actual read-throughs of the entire books. So if you become a Patreon members, I will be doing a read-through of the book in audio book format so you can hear the whole thing there. And we'll also have additional insights into the books and the inspiration of these books, like for example the works of Lovecraft or psychological books or occult books, in our weekly Pontos Fathom podcast. So have weekly episodes of that kind of explore the interrelations of some of these books. Okay, so let's get into the series. Again, this is August Moldenhauer's Kathu Journals out of Lovecraft Providence. Starts out, the first book is The Genealogy of Cthulhu. Second book is The Psychoanalysis of Realia. And the third book is The Archaeology of Yog-Sothoth. Okay, so if we kind of go through these, the books sort of are all the same theme. If you can read from the back cover on the Genealogy of Cthulhu. Well, maybe before that, let's talk the introduction to the series. The introduction to the series, I'll just read the intro paragraph and just kind of talk about the inspiration here. But right here in the opening quote, it says, "For what it's worth, I venture the opinion that the really important work on the Necronomicon will be carried out not by magicians, but by followers of Carl Jung, who will regard it as a document describing so far unsuspected layers of the unconscious mind." Colin Wilson. And if we go into the preface to the series, I'll just sort of read this intro paragraph. "One is seldom offered the chance to enter into a work arrangement that amounts to no less than one's ideal dream job. And when it would be natural to grasp the opportunity with confidence and never turn back. And yet, be careful what you dream of, if such a thing is possible to say, for it would require an element of lucidity that is not always at the command of the dreamer. Hence, this is the providing a literary philosophical commentary to the series of books, the Kathu Journals out of Lovecraft Providence, a chance to dig deep into the various areas of interest: weird horror genre, philosophical hermeneutics, historical authentication, biblical exegesis, forensics, as well as the love of the presumed fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. And so the requisite labors to provide such an analysis alongside the original facsimile prints of the notebooks that comprise the focus of the series, the Kathu Journals out of Lovecraft's Providence. The following series is broken into 3 volumes, each book to explore the various theaters of analysis required for such an odd text, which challenges categorization in the minimum and may in fact represent an hitherto unforeseen genre." I think that introduction is kind of the clue here, is that the series can be seen in 2 ways. It can be seen as a fictional nonfiction series. So that is to say, it presents itself as nonfiction, but in fact it's fictitious. And then we can think of lots of these books that are like that. Books that presume to be a kind of alternate reality. But it also points us to it indicates that perhaps it is a fiction, just being a nonfiction that's told by an unreliable narrator or a mad narrator. And I think it's in that gray space that we start to look at a kind of Lovecraftian gnosis, which is how can we really know either of these spaces? And I think this is that kind of tension that the books hold us in. So let's kind of look at the Genealogy of Cthulhu first. Just from a look through the book, it presents the actual pages of the Kathu journals out of Lovecraft's Providence with analysis of those pages. All right, so if we go to the back cover, it reads, "The Genealogy of Cthulhu, the first volume of the series, the Kathu journals out of Lovecraft's Providence, begins with the genealogy of Lovecraft's dream cycle under the manuscript author's hermeneutical gaze. This current effort brings with it the physical acquisition of the notebooks, the historical settings around which the notebooks have been written, as well as the path around the globe that the notebooks have traveled. The Genealogy of Cthulhu deals with the questions of authorship, disputed claims of authorship, as well as speculation into the final state of the notebook author. The work is a genealogy into the philosophical and literary origins through the analysis of the texts of the notebooks. The analysis begins as a narrative, well-versed in ancient texts, but crosses quickly into madness with its speculation and possibility and historical evidence of themes and entities that are considered fiction in the themes of H.P. Lovecraft. Horrors which the notebook's author makes claims to suggest, in fact, are real. The things we hear are the sounds of the dead dreaming of Cthulhu, or the gibbering mouths of Shub-Niggurath, things that validate the unknowable and ineffable mysteries from beyond, things that came to Lovecraft as nightmares, and things that inspired his fiction, things that in the end should not be." Okay, so that's a kind of a first view of Genealogy of Cthulhu. Psychoanalysis of Realia starts also with its premise here is an inquiry into the language of the Providence cipher and this Necronomicon fragment. So you can see here that there are pages of the Providence cipher, paragraphs, and then the paragraphs are translated by Moldenhauer below. And then also this Necronomicon fragment, which is seen to have a different layer of text for each layer that is explored in multiple layers. And those translations are also given. And then there are the concepts of cosmic pessimism, horror, psychosis, non-Euclidean topologies of madness, the permeability of fleshy mammalian minds, and translations of some of the text here. So let's read the back cover. Psychoanalysis of Realia is the second book in the series of the Kathu journals out of Lovecraft's Providence. The possibility of a psychoanalytical analysis begins with the text referred to by the manuscript author as the Providence cipher and the Necronomicon fragment, which claim to be written examples of the Relayan language in both the Cthulian and Shub-Niggurahian dialects. Analysis of the fragments of the Realia language provided, as well as the various astrological charts presented in the notebooks, presumably for when the stars are right. The approach to analysis is multidisciplinary, utilizing scientific as well as paranormal techniques. Cthulhu's dead dreaming becomes most simply a choice of language for Lovecraft, and therefore open to Freudian or even Lacanian interpretations. More so if viewed through the lens of the language of the occult, the dead dreaming of Cthulhu, submerged beneath the ocean in sunken Realia, takes on a frightening proportion when viewed not as the instance of the role of the imagination, but as the real, which can bring about the psychosis in the very nature of the xenodemonic that it represents. So this is the Psychoanalysis of Realia, Volume 2. Finally, Volume 3, Archaeology of Yog-Sothoth. Again, a quick flip through the book. A return in detail to the Necronomicon fragment and the discovery therein of structures, mathematical, calculatable, sometimes resembling viruses or cellular level. Also waveforms and topologies that seem to map to regions of outer space and perhaps the origin of the Cthulian mythos. So these spiking waveforms are then analyzed numerically as a signal from perhaps Tau Ceti from different areas. In the end, Archaeology of Yog-Sothoth Yog-Sothoth is, as Lovecraft said, Yog-Sothothery. It's just a kind of a mad tour, but along the way, layer by layer of the archaeology reveals some plausibility in its madness. From the back cover, the Archaeology of Yog-Sothoth is the third and final book of the Kathu journals out of Lovecraft's Providence. The most preternatural details are revealed from a forensic study of the elements of the physical Kathu notebook journals and their construction. What emerges is the unknowable nature of Yog-Sothoth, evidenced by the lower order dimensional artifacts left behind in radio telescope transmissions from the far reaches of space, in virulent and bacterial phenomena that defy nosological classification, in the very vibrations of the atoms that gibber their waveform madness, like a trail of breadcrumbs to some fiendish witch's castle. Beyond the final conclusions, beyond the evidence presented, past the malign presence of Cthulhu and Nyarlathotep, the evidences from the Necronomicon fragment, as revealed in the Kathu journals, explore the analytical techniques to the edge of horror. So there we have the 3 volumes. Like I said, I will do a deep read of each book, an individual analysis of some of the sections. We'll go through the table of contents in the individual videos. But this is an overview of the series. If you're interested, the links are below. And I'll just close out with a final paragraph from the Archaeology of Yog-Sothoth. So in this one, the front piece quote is, "It was an all-in-one and one-in-all limitless being and self, not merely a thing of one space-time continuum, but allied to the ultimate animating essence of existence, whole unbounded sweep, the last utter sweep, which has no confines and which outreaches fancy and mathematics alike. It was perhaps that which certain secret cults of earth has whispered as Yog-Sothoth, and which has been a deity under other names, that which the crustaceans of Yuggoth worship as the Beyond One, and which the vaporous brains of the spiral nebula know as the untranslatable sign." H.P. Lovecraft. I'll close out with the end of the preface to the series, just a paragraph from... it says, beyond the final conclusions, okay, one is immediately reminded of the wandering style of the alchemical writings of Jung, which on the one hand seem to be the just disjointed meanderings of a mystic dreamer, if not for the fact, on the other hand, that they are composed in a style with a rigor of diction and grammar that only the most erudite of German philosophical scholars should produce. Our concern here are as splendid as they are macabre, for not only are we presented with a text that bridges the fiction with the possible in a way that strains the mind, but it moves us toward the direction of contemplating the contents of these notebooks as probable, which is perhaps the most frightening evidence to be disclosed by this research and analysis. So there you have it, the Archaeology of Yog-Sothoth, the Psychoanalysis of Realia, and Genealogy of Cthulhu. Click on the link if you'd like to see the individual volumes. We also have the Pontos Fathom podcast, which is a weekly episode where we explore books that inspire us, whether they're Jungian, psychological books, occult books, or other fiction. This month we're focusing on Lovecraft. Future months we'll be diving into Philip K. Dick, the Dune books, and works of Michael Moorcock, Robert E. Howard. So we're going to be covering some of the classics of fantasy and horror and science fiction, and with a bend toward psychological and occult reading. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Would like to hear from you. What do you think about the concept? Do you have your own stories of Lovecraft that you'd like to share? We can do it in the comments here, or we can do it over on Patreon. Like I mentioned, the Patreon will have I will be doing the read-throughs of the full books. So it's a great place to start this conversation. So thank you for joining, and I will talk to you soon and see you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.